Pedro from A&P-REACTS. I'm here today with Pat Reilly. How's it going?
What's up, man? I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good, doing good. Long time no see.
Yeah, it's been at least a couple years
Yeah,
since we met each other in the flesh.
yeah. Last time I saw you, you were actually in my living room.
I know. I remember that. It was very late, and we were very grateful.
Yeah. I know it was a blast, and it was an absolute pleasure to have you guys over to spend the night over, whatever. As always, and you know that once the Corona thing is all over and done with, and you hit the road, you can always crash at my place anytime you need.
That's great. I appreciate it, and I look forward to that, man, for sure.
So let's talk a little bit about your solo album, Path to Transcendence. It all started by you putting out a link for a funding campaign. So looking back now, how would you say? Obviously, it went well because you got the necessary funds to get the record going. But looking back, were you surprised with the support that you received?
I was kind of surprised, but at the same time, I wasn't, because I put a lot of effort into getting the word out, and I marketed things in the way I've never done so. Like completely just messaging people, and no shame in it. Say, hey, I'm doing this. I would appreciate anything, and the thing is, a lot of people, I think, are hesitant, or they look at something and they put it off. But when you actually contact someone and make a direct connection, one-to-one person, they feel more inclined. Like, yeah, I do want to, be a part of this.
Yeah, I'm glad you reached out to me. I was more than happy to participate and help out with whatever little I could, because I honestly wanted to support your efforts. I wanted to support the album. So I was really happy to see that you got the necessary funding to get the project going.
I appreciate the help from you, from everybody, and yeah, it was extremely, what can I say? I'm just grateful that I was able to get support in the way that I did. It helped a lot.
How long had you been working on these tracks by the time you started the GoFundMe campaign?
At least 3 months, probably. I think I started that campaign in either late May or early June, or possibly even sooner than that. So maybe it was April. I don't know. It's a blur now. Everything's a blur. But yeah, I was at least 3 months of effort into the album before deciding to go for the campaign.
Wow. Is it a different process for you from a creative standpoint to put a solo record together versus working in a team environment when you're working on an album?
It's a different process completely, because when you're working with musicians collaborating, you bounce ideas off each other, and sometimes one person's idea will evolve into somebody else's, and things just evolve, I think, easier when you have people to bounce it off of. But part of the struggle for me in the beginning as a solo artist was not having that dynamic of throwing a guitar riff and someone saying, yeah, that's great, why don't you do this too? Or so I was my own judgmental person and it was hard in the beginning. It's different.
You were a judge, jury, and executioner of your own tracks.
Yeah, and it's tough to be that way, because you question things sometimes, like, is this good, is this not good? So you just got to go with your instinct, I guess.
Did you let anybody listen to anything at all to kind of give you that feedback that you were lacking by not being in a band, like this being your solo album?
Well, definitely my wife is somebody that I constantly bombard with ideas, which is a blessing and a curse for her. I don't really show it to too many other people. I actually did have Nature from Tengger Cavalry listen to most of the tracks, because early on, he's the one who got me started in the writing process, and I was just okay with releasing singles here and there. And he said, you should write an album, and I want to back the album. I want to do this. So I was completely motivated at that point, because I had no reason to not write a full album.
It was a weird process to start that with him and then finish it off without him.
It wasn't, because I knew the direction I was going. He wasn't trying to influence the music or anything like that. So the album was going to get written. It was obviously a bittersweet to end off and finish everything and not be able to, show him the finished product. So yeah, that was tough. But aside from that, the music would have been what it was regardless.
I thought it was interesting that you went with the decision to do 6 instrumental tracks and then 3 tracks with guest vocalists. What was your thought process behind that?
So the reason that happened is because when I'm analyzing the music, sometimes it just in my mind, I'm like, this is not an instrumental song. And some of the songs that had been written with the intention of being instrumental, that just didn't work for me. Like, I'm like, I have no ideas for a guitar to speak here and actually make it complete as a song where people would be like, yeah, this is interesting. So I decided that 3 of those tracks needed vocals, and that's pretty much the reason why it ended up being that way.
How did you pick the vocalists for those songs?
2 of the songs were vocalists that I was in a band with prior. This band Through the Discipline, one of old projects I was with. And one guy I had met through some website, I think it was Bandmix or Craigslist. Anthony was his name, and I've been wanting to collaborate with him for a long time, and finally made it happen. His voice is fantastic, so I was so happy to have him on the album.
As you were working on the tracks, I noticed that you had a drummer on the tracks. Did you have the conscious decision to actually have a drummer versus just programming the drums yourself?
Yes, programming the drums is cool for, writing demos and getting the ideas out there. But for the finished product, I wanted a human element. I wanted it to feel like a person was playing, which you don't always get that with electronic drums unless you're very meticulous. And even there, in your mind that it's not, it's a machine, which really doesn't matter to me. But there was actually 2 drummers, so split up the duties between the 2 of them. One guy's in California, Tadpole, and then my friend Mike in Queens. So, they did their thing, and then I just pretty much what I did was transpose that to MIDI. It is with technology now, you can convert live drums to electronic drums. So that was it.
Did they give you any hints or any help with some of the songs as you guys were putting everything together, or you had pretty much the idea, you had the skeleton of what you wanted? It was just asking them to fill in on their part in order to complete those tracks?
The drum beats I was pretty meticulous about keeping the feel the same, for them to be able to be creative and feel like they have their mark on the music. Of course, I was, their drum rolls and all that stuff, that's on them, but the rhythms and the feels and all that stuff pretty much had to match how I had written it.
Well, what song for you was the most difficult track to put together when you look back at the finished product?
Definitely Dracaris, because Dracaris was written as one song with the intro. So I split it up. So the intro is The Sleepless, and then Dracaris is part 2. But when I was originally writing it, it was one piece, and then figuring out how to evolve that song from that intro into how it ends was pretty tough. And I there was so many moments where I'm like, I don't even know what to do here. I spent days of confusion, and ultimately what it boiled down to is like the song has to be musical, and it has to feel like a composition, and it has to speak. It can't just be a bunch of guitar riffs laying on top of each other,
Funny enough, that's my favorite song.
A lot of people have said that to me, and I think it gets the least amount of exposure because I put more publicity and promotion into Between Two Worlds because it's kind of the single and the easiest listening song on the album. It's very straightforward, and it's just over 3 minutes long, where Dracaris, if you listen, the whole thing is like 7 minutes and change. So a lot of people don't have the the mentality to even sit in through a song that's 7-8 minutes long.
I just thought it was incredible. I thought it had a great melody, great approach, really well constructed. It really feels like a journey within itself, within the track itself. And then it has this underlying Game of Thrones vibe to it.
Oh, of course.
So when you add all of these different elements together, to me, it's a winning formula. You cannot walk away from it. It's just a magnificent track.
Thanks, man. Well, obviously, it wouldn't have existed without the Game of Thrones theme song to begin with. I changed up the melody just slightly so that I wouldn't have any copyright issues. So I just changed one note. But I have to give it out to the composer of, I can't even pronounce his name right now. But anyway, everyone knows who he is. He's fantastic, and he's definitely an inspiration.
Yeah, you definitely feel that vibe, but you did enough to still make it kind of your own twist on it, to have your own fingerprint, your own touch on that song. At least that's how it felt to me listening to the record.
That's great. Well, it's just the one melody's in there where everyone knows, like, all right, that's Game of Thrones, and then I only added in, like, I think it's only there in the beginning and the very end for, like, it takes up about 50 seconds of the song, where the song is actually like 6 minutes long. So.
Yeah, in my opinion, it just kind of gives it that atmosphere. But then the rest of the song is its own thing.
Yeah.
But having that at the beginning, it sets the mood. It gives the track the atmosphere that it needs, and then finishing it off with it reminds you that that's the journey you were on. But everything that happens in between, it's completely different. It's its own living, breathing, animal, if you will.
Yeah, that was the goal. I don't want to do a cover song. I just want to touch upon and pay tribute to the music that inspired the song to exist.
By the way, I have to ask you this because I felt the songs with Michael on vocals were perhaps, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I felt like they were the heaviest tracks on the record. Why those two songs? Is it because of his influence, of his style of vocals on the track that dictated the mood of the song, the heaviness of the song? Or when you were constructing the tracks, they were already heavy even before you had him doing the vocals on it?
Yeah, the songs were written before the vocals were there. I did choose him because his style works best with those songs. Anthony is a very diverse musician. He's done everything from rap to metal and probably things in between that I haven't even heard of. But his vocal and range and the cleanliness of it just worked better with Winter Sunrise. But yeah, those two songs were heavy before Mike was there.
He just added a little bit of extra heaviness.
Yeah, he just added that grit and that aggression that he does so well, and they work.
When you look back at the record now, like you said before, and I said before, that you're your own judge, jury, and executioner as far as the record is concerned. Finalizing the album with these tracks, was that a difficult process? Were you up to the last minute wondering if there was another song that was going to come in or a song that was going to go out, or pretty early on you were down to these tracks as this is going to be the final product?
So there was one song that didn't make it on the record, and it's not because I didn't want it to be there. It's just it was going to have vocals as well, but time was crunching too close to the end where I wanted to get it out, and I just couldn't get a reliable vocalist that could put the time in. I went through a lot of auditions with vocalists that just weren't working for me for that track. As far as taking tracks off of the album, though, everything that was there, I was pretty set on keeping. If anything, I would have wanted to have a couple of more tracks,
Well, this leaves room for another one, for another album.
Exactly, and I'll be working on that very shortly. I've gotten a lot busier outside of my own music, which makes it tough. Like I do session work now and stuff, which is great to actually get paid from music, but I'm not writing as much as my own music now.
Yeah, it takes a little bit away from your own time to create your own stuff. But what you've created with this record was absolutely magnificent. And I was talking to you when you sent me the album for me to listen to, and I mentioned to you how good the production, the mixing, the mastering on this record is. It's absolutely phenomenal, really like incredible job. And then you're like, well, I did it myself. I was like,
yeah, thank you.
When did you learn how to do this? Because it's incredible.
Thank you so much. It's a crazy process that I had to go through. So even though the Kickstarter was successful, at the end of the day, when I was searching for mix engineers, mastering, I realized I actually didn't have enough money to do everything. So it was boiled down to like, I have to do this myself or I'm going to get a very mediocre product. And I just spent hours and hours figuring out how to do a proper mix. I already had all the software even before learning it because I've always been interested and I like to have the tools. And then I just did a lot of backs and forth, a lot of A's and B's, and a lot of referencing in the studio in my car. And at the end of the day, I had put so much work into it, and I think it came out great. And I'm surprised that I was even able to do that in this very room that you're seeing me talk to you in.
Wow, it's incredible. I mean, the final product, if you didn't tell me, I wouldn't believe it. It's very polished, very, very well put together. Really professional stuff. Does this open doors for you as far as other things for you to do within the music industry besides playing in a band or doing your own stuff?
I think it will eventually once I guess market myself in that way, but I tend not to push too hard. I do so many things already. Like I do my own video work and the music. I really want to focus on being a performer and a writer. or even a session player, which is starting to happen. But as far as being a mix engineer, like if I start getting busy in that respect, like I might as well just put the guitar in the closet, because it's going to be too hard to maintain what the skills necessary to be the person I am right now.
So for now, you feel like you have enough to just help yourself so that you're not dependent on somebody else and you're not spending money outside of yourself. Might as well invest that in you and allow you to create your own stuff.
Absolutely. I think that's the best way for me. And I hope other artists can see that it's possible to do that, that it's very intimidating at first to jump in and figure out how to mix and stuff. But you invest 10% of what you're going to spend in one recording session to do it on your own. Like, you're set for life, basically, and you can do something great.
I think you're minimizing it, because I think it's a lot more difficult than what you're portraying. I think there was a lot of time, a lot of hours going into not just having the software, because anybody could have it. That doesn't mean you're going to be good at it. You still have to learn how to use it properly in order to create the album, because you're looking at a record that it's not necessarily very easy to put together. You have instrumental tracks with a lot of layers on them, and you have tracks with vocals on it. I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces. You need to make sure that everything flows perfectly, that everything is continuous. It's not like you're creating a punk record.
No.
No offense to punk, but you know what I mean? Like, there's no room for roughness and for dirty edges around the music.
You're absolutely right. And what that really boils down to is absolutely loving and being invested in what you're doing, because there was very few moments that went by where I was like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. I was just like, I wanted so much for this to be great, and I was so impassioned to make that happen that you just stay up and you just work on it for hours and hours. If you're loving what you're doing, it's that much easier to stay involved and focused.
You mentioned a little bit about working on a next record, and that's going to be my next question for you. Considering how successful this album was, and how the fans' response has been to it, does that give you the extra motivation to start slowly working on something, and perhaps not announce it, but in your own mind creating a time frame on when you want the next record to come out?
It absolutely does. And every day that goes by, I think about it more and more. And after seeing the response to this album, like I want to get started on the next one. And I wish I was doing it already. I wish I was deep in the process. If I can do one a year, that'd be great. So I would like to get one out by next year, but I guess I can't promise myself or anybody else right now because of all the other things I'm doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. To answer your question, yes, it does. It's on my mind 100%.
How do you look at ways of promoting the album in terms of touring? We all know that now there's nothing happening. There's no shows, no nothing, because of coronavirus, but this is not going to last forever. Eventually it's going to be gone. And then the doors will open again and people will be able to start touring again. How are you going to approach when that time comes? Are you looking at doing it just yourself, going out on the road, playing some shows at some small gigs, or you're looking at perhaps opening for another band and attaching yourself to perhaps not a bigger tour, but a more medium-sized tour?
I'm configuring or thinking that I'm probably going to go out on my own and start slow, because I don't have a band backing me. I'm going to be putting together backing tracks and a decent stage show if I can, and without adding any pressure to myself on top of that, I figure just go out and try to get bands that are in a similar genre that want to just jump on a bill. Like, I already had started to create a tour for myself that was supposed to happen in July. I was about 4 shows into planning it when this happened, and then now I don't even know. I feel like I should just cancel the possibility of even doing it, because look, we're in the beginning of June. There's riots, there's pandemic. It's like, what's going on? I'm going to leave the state now and go. Who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, there's too much uncertainty right now, and like you just said, it doesn't seem the right time to take a risk of getting on the road and losing money and putting yourself in a situation that you're putting yourself at risk and creating difficulties for even having the ability to come home safely.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm totally fine doing what I'm doing in the studio and the session work, and just promoting the music online as much as I can, trying to build up the streaming numbers. And when the time comes, I'll be out there, because that's where I want to be. And I think it'll help me to just be on stage in front of people.
Do you feel if this break is too long and you're not able to get back on the road until, like, let's say you're planning for this July, and let's look at it from a perspective that perhaps you have to push it until the July of next year. Do you feel like you're going to have maybe an EP or something along those lines to release before you hit the road, or having this album released this year is going to give you enough for you to go on the road a year later?
I think it'll be enough with the album for fans and listeners' sake. For myself, for my own personal reasons, I would like to have something new, at least from between now and then, just so I have fresh material for myself, because you know how artists are going to get sick of playing their own music, practicing it and practicing it. So by the time I actually get to play this stuff, I might not even enjoy playing it as much anymore. So
yeah, it creates an issue there. I have moving on from your own solo project, I have a couple of questions to ask you about your time with Tengger Cavalry.
Sure.
Are you guys thinking of doing any re-release of any material? I don't know, some recordings that perhaps didn't make it out. Is there anything in the plans, or with Nature's passing, the band is pretty much done?
Well, Nature was the mastermind and the brains of the band. He was everything of the band: the producer, the decision maker, manager. So chances are there won't be anything new coming out as a collaboration. You know, actually, we're in the same month that this whole thing happened. So the anniversary of his passing is coming up. I was hoping that I could put something together as a tribute for myself. Not sure I'm going to be able to make it in the time that I'd like to, but I think if anything's to happen, it's probably going to be on an individual basis, tribute here and there. I would love to do something in the genre to pay tribute. I would be more than happy to be part of the band and keep it moving forward. But either, you know, Nature's the band. Nature he's the guy. You don't have a band, the Tengger, without Nature. You don't.
No, I don't think you do. I like the idea of perhaps getting the guys together to do 1 or 2 tracks as a tribute, because like you said, the anniversary is coming up. But I think without him, such an iconic presence, he was the heartbeat of the band. You take that away from the band, it's just not the same thing. And I think if he did something, it would kind of cheapen everything that the band achieved up until that point, at least in my opinion. I don't know if you agree.
I agree with you 100%. If it was going to go on, it would have to be rebranded and just understood that, you know, this is not Tengger Cavalry, but this is our tribute to what was Tengger Cavalry, you know.
I agree with you 100%. As you look back at the time that you spent with him and with the band on the road, playing, creating music, what are perhaps the most fond memory that you take away from that time?
There was just so much horsing around on tour, and you know, Nature's had a very funny sense of humor, and most of us in the band did. So, you know, there was a lot of times where it was very serious. When it comes down to like, all right, we have a job to do now, like the mentality changed completely. Like during the show, a couple of like hours before the set, it was just very serious business mode. But after that, there was just a lot of horsing around, ridiculous, you know, perversions of humor all over the place. So those are my favorite memories. And also I had never experienced such a loyal fan base in anything that I've ever been in. People that were just so open-armed, you being one of them included. Like we had pretty much spent very little on any hotel rooms, because every show there was somebody who wanted to house us for the night. So that was just very humbling and amazing.
Well, thank you very much for your time today, Pat. I really appreciate it. Best of luck with your endeavors. I mean, either be your solo work or perhaps one day doing some mixing and mastering. We never know.
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of laid the groundwork with this record. So I'm sure as the word gets out there, other smaller up-and-coming bands perhaps will reach out to you and ask you for some help. So I just want to wish you all the best. You really deserve it. You really created a magnificent record. I was really blown away. I mean, I was expecting a good album. I know how good of a guitar player you are. But when I got to listen to the record, I was like, wow, this guy, he really put something incredible together. I was really honestly blown away.
Thank you so much, man. It's great to hear you say that. As you said, I know you've listened to so many bands, many interviews, and you've been there in the metal scene. So to hear it from a guy with experience like that, it's an amazing feeling. It makes it worth it.
And I told you before, I'm not a huge fan of instrumental. And when I listened to your and he said, "Oh, there's a couple of tracks with vocals." That was your answer. And I was like, as I listened to it, I was like, by the time I got to the vocals, I was like, I could care less at that point because the music was so good up until then. That it was just like, wow, man, this is really good stuff. Like, honestly, I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. I honestly really enjoyed it. Great record, really well put together. And like I said, for an album that has these many layers, these many moving pieces, this beautiful music to it, you did a magnificent job as far as putting it all together. So huge kudos to you for not only creating the music, but then putting it all together.
Thank you so much, man. That means a lot to me. I really appreciate it. And thank you for your time and having me on your show, man. You guys are
Oh, no
awesome.
problem. My pleasure. My pleasure. I'm glad we got a chance to chat.
Me too. Me too. Hope we see each other again soon in less than a year. We'll
Yeah, I
see.
hope so as well. Yeah, I hope so as well. And then
Yeah,
the
man.
next time there's an album or the next time you're in town, we'll have this chat in person.
Excellent. Look forward to it. Thank
All
you.
right, man. Take care.
You too.